Cecilia Cortez, she, her, hers, ella pronouns. I'm the program officer for economic security and justice.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dimple Joan Putra. I'm the Senior Program Officer at the Foundation, and my pronouns are she, her, hers.
And good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gisela Marroquin. I'm the Director of Programs here at the New York Women's Foundation, and my pronouns are she, her, hers, ella.
Hi, everyone. My name is Marissa Crawford. I'm the Director of Grants and Operations at the Foundation, and I use she, her pronouns.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sojourner Rivers. I use she and her pronouns. I am the Senior Program Officer focusing on safety, healing justice, and reproductive justice.
And hello, everybody. My name is Taina Sandin. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am the Program Officer for Girls and Young Women of Color.
Thank you so much, team. And everyone who's here with us today, please feel free to use the chat to introduce yourselves to each other and to us. And also, please use the chat to ask questions throughout the presentation. We'll have an eye on the chat during the discussion, and we'll follow the formal presentation with a Q&A session. And please don't hold back any questions. We're here to support and answer as much as possible during our time together today. So let's review our agenda. We'll first share what the early investment opportunity is, followed by more specific information on strategic focus areas and priority issues. Next, we'll talk about eligibility for the funding opportunity and our approach to participatory grant making. And finally, we'll talk about how to apply, important dates, and then have time at the end for your questions. And we noted that the chat is disabled right now, but we'll turn that on in a moment. And so with that, I'll hand over to Gisela to share more about early investment.
Thank you, Dana. So thank you all for joining us. Our early investment strategy is really the bread and butter of the Foundation's grant making. It is historically what has really built out of our commitment to invest in women-led and community-based solutions. And we are here because we prioritize funding small and emerging organizations and programs. That means on the grassroots level, we want to see those community solutions being built by community members, and specifically for communities that are underinvested, such as women, girls, and TG and CB people throughout New York City. This is a long-term, multi-year commitment that we make to organizations. We know that that's imperative to carry out the work, especially if you are a grassroots organization as well as an emerging group. And so we commit to investment in these organizations over a 5-year period. We also provide what we call capacity building opportunities for organizations, which means building out the infrastructure of these organizations throughout that 5-year period, whether that means for the whole organization, for the staff, as well as how the executive leadership is evolving and building out the leadership pipeline for their members. We also are always really interested in ensuring that the leadership of women of color, of individuals of color are elevated in these organizations. And we hope that this investment really establishes that leadership pipeline. We can go to the next slide.
So as you can also check the grant guidelines for details about our priority, our focus areas. I just want to uplift that for economic security and justice, we are looking to hear more about the strategies that are building and retaining community wealth and economic power in communities of color, particularly for groups led, as Isabel mentioned, by women, girls, cis and trans, gender expansive people. We're looking for organizations that also focus on just transition and sustainable models. This could be clean energy like solar, wind, the cannabis industry are some of the examples for these areas. Additionally, for safety and healing, the foundation supports groups addressing the roots of gender-based violence, and this is through immediate relief for people affected by these issues, but also long-term strategies for advocacy, prevention, and intervention in these areas. Reproductive justice is, again, we're supporting organizations and groups working on bodily autonomy, self-determination of women, cis and trans, and gender expansive people, and particularly those organizations that are addressing birth justice, inequalities in pregnancy, and abortion access. So as mentioned before, this could be strategies that focus on prevention, intervention, or advocacy. Next slide.
Also, some of our priority issues and strategies for this year, right, are about supporting and promoting the local and democratic ownership of businesses, in particular small businesses, and keeping in mind the importance of living wage jobs, access to affordable housing, and financial competency. We also are prioritizing efforts focused on affordable quality caregiving, right? And so that is childcare, elder care, family care, and everything in between, and ensuring that it is done in a way that allows for dignity and the rights, and again, the living wages of these providers. We're also piloting and scaling up some community supports. And these are things that we've heard from you, our grantees, things like mental health, restorative justice, education, and really focusing on communities that are most underserved and impacted by economic insecurity. And also, we want to prioritize advancing climate justice work that impact the environmental justice of low-income women and families of color, and also initiatives that provide support, again, related to affordable, stable housing. And this includes services, advocacy, policy change, and organizing by the community and led by the community.
Thanks, Taina. Yeah, and just continuing on with sharing our priority issues and strategies. Again, really focusing on reproductive justice, as I'm sure many of you can imagine why many of our rights and safeties for communities, women, girls, and trans and gender nonconforming folks are under attack. We're also thinking specifically about the racial disparities that exist in these inequities that really compound such issues like pregnancy, mortality, and morbidity, and really trying to think about equitable policies, structures, and systems change. We're also really thinking a lot about supporting immigrant and migrant communities. Again, something that we have been hearing from grantee partners, our community members, seeing in the news, how to really show up for asylum seekers through different ways, whether it's services, coalition, organizing, advocacy. Also thinking specifically about immigrant women within these populations and gender nonconforming and non-binary immigrant populations as it relates to quality healthcare, thinking about mental health and healing justice, right? So not just within systems, but beyond systems. And then, we're always interested in growing the leadership of directly impacted folks, specifically women and queer people of color who are impacted by systems. We want to support them being the drivers, leaders, visionaries of the work, supported by resources, of course. Next slide, please. And just, sharing a little bit about our priority communities, which again, there's some overlap with the strategy focus, but just really want to name that we see ourselves as a community funder, right? As a gender justice funder, really wanting to support communities that often are not prioritized or, funded at Levels to Succeed by traditional philanthropy, right, or traditional funding streams. So again, really focused as a gender justice funder, thinking about our trans women and other gender non-conforming, non-binary people, thinking about Native and Indigenous communities, thinking about queer communities more broadly, those who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, intersex, thinking about folks who are moving through different substance use, right, and needing support. Also really want to name, related to my portfolio, obviously supporting survivors, but also thinking about criminalized survivors who are often caught in multiple systems, in the criminal legal system even, folks with disabilities, folks who are unhoused, folks who are in the sex trade and looking to support their safety and health and rights, older organizations. And we're going to also shout out Staten Island, thinking about how we can further support our community members in Staten Island. Next slide, to Dimple, I believe.
Thanks, Sojourner. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the actual funding opportunity and eligibility for organizations. So this opportunity is you are applying for $80,000 for a one-year grant. And I want to skip to the middle section first, where we talk about eligibility specifically. So we are accepting proposals from organizations that have not been funded through the early investment strategy before. So, in other words, if your organization has participated in their EI strategy, that organization would be ineligible to apply to this particular opportunity. Some more around the eligibility: your organization has to be a registered 50c3 or have a 50c3 fiscal sponsor. Also be operating within the 5 boroughs of New York City, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, and then have been in existence for at least 6 months. In terms of the funding opportunity and what you should apply around, my colleagues have listed and walked through some of the strategic areas and priorities that the foundation has for their early investment strategy. So there's 2 ways of thinking about it. If you are applying within those strategic priorities, and you're within the realm of New York City, that work is done in New York City, we encourage you to think about that as applying for general operating support. However, if the work that you're applying for falls outside of the 5 boroughs of New York City, and even outside of the strategic priorities that we've listed in the grant guidelines, then we encourage you to apply through a programmatic lens, so program support. And that's just so, an early investment has traditionally been grounded in New York City. And so we want to be able to kind of uplift that difference. What organizations are not eligible to apply for, or what our funding restriction is lobbying activities. And that's also connected to the work that we invest in, which is connected to 50c3 work. This particular opportunity is a 1-year opportunity, and the grant year will begin July 1st, 2023, and will go on to July 30th, 2024. And Camille, I'm gonna hand it off to you.
Thank you, Dimple. So at the New York Women's Foundation, since inception, now close to 36 years ago, we've always, since that time, incorporated a participatory approach to our grant making. What does that mean? It means that we seek out volunteers, members of the community, particularly those with lived experiences or professional experiences, who can come and contribute to a process of grant making with us. They join a team of other volunteers in partnership with a program officer, where they read proposals, they attend site visits, are actively participating in those site visits, and make recommendations around funding. And so that has always been a part of the early investment strategy. We're excited to do that again this cycle. So if you apply for an early investment grant and you're moved to the site visit level, you will be visited by a member of our programs team, along with a GAC team, GAC standing for Grants Advisory Committee. And they'll come, obviously prepared to talk about what you shared in your proposal, come with questions about that, really seeking to understand the alignment with our mission, our values, and our priorities for the cycle. We see this approach as rooted in principles of inclusiveness and empowerment. It is grounded in trust-based philanthropy principles, and we're excited to continue this work, especially with a cross-cultural alliance of stakeholders who will actively participate in the process. So all applicants that move to the site visit stage will engage with a team of GAC members in their site visit. And we're excited to bring those voices and to that conversation. So moving on to how to apply.
Thank you, Camille. So yes, as Camille mentioned, we're going to turn to the technical part of applying. And the first thing that we want to remind folks of is that if you are not already registered in the New York Women's Foundation Flux system, you do need to register in advance. And those registrations are approved manually. So there may be a 1 to 2 business day delay. And we flag that and want to encourage everyone to register and log in early to ensure that you have access to the system to review the application so that you can be in touch if you need any support or have any questions as you're applying and in advance of the deadline. So next slide. There are a few steps to applying. So as I mentioned, the first step is, of course, logging into that system. And you can see there is on that landing page, you have both the option in the lower right-hand side to create your account, and that's what will support you to get registered in the system. And then once you have those credentials, you can use the little left-hand box to log into the system. Step 2 and next slide. Once you are into the system, you'll see on the left-hand side is where you'll navigate through all of the different sections of our Flux instance. So the first area that you want to take a look at is your organization profile. And that's over on the left-hand side. You click My Organization, and it will open up a section for you to update your contact information, your address, but then also add information that we look at related to your areas of work, demographics for your organization, as well as for your beneficiaries. I'll flag that demographic information is optional, and we do only ask that you provide information that you already collect. Turning then to the next step, once you've done your organization profile, you're going to move over to the application. So again, on the left-hand side bar, you're going to click on General Application. And once you click on that, you're going to see that little green box there that says Open General Grant Request. Once you do that, it's going to pop out a general application for you to complete, which is step 4. So once you go ahead and click open that general request, this is what you'll first see. It has a table of contents, so you see all of the various sections on the application form. We ask that you work through and complete that full general application. The next step, and we want to remind you to save often. Please save often. You do not have to complete the full application at one time. You can click save and close, and that will allow you to return to the application at a later date. But please do save often as you're working through the application. So moving on to the next section. The last part of the application that we want to highlight is the request documents section. This is the final portion, and it's where you'll upload all of the documents that are required as part of the application. They're both listed in the grant guidelines as well as in that specific section of the application, so you have that in front of you. The last step, once you've completed your organization profile as well as the application form, you're going to hit save and close once you're ready to, and then the submit button will appear on that lower right hand side. Go ahead and submit once you're ready. Once you submit, you are not able to edit the application any longer. If you do need to make any edits, please do reach out to me, and my information will be at the end. And we can talk about making any updates that you need. But once you do submit, you will no longer have access to edit the application. It takes a few seconds for Flux to move the application from a draft to submitted. So don't be alarmed if you don't see it right away. You may need to refresh your page, but you'll see a status change, likely with that refresh, that it will move from draft to submitted. And if you have any questions, of course, please don't hesitate to be in touch. So the last thing that we want to highlight on applying are those important dates. Next slide, please. So again, February 28th midnight is when we are asking everyone to please submit your applications in the Flux system by. We're going to be in touch with you all, anticipated date of Friday, March 17th, to let you know if your organization has been selected to move forward to the site visit stage. You are selected to move forward to the site visit stage. We're hosting those visits the first 3 weeks of April, and we do ask that you hold all time slots at 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. So that we can quickly set up those opportunities to meet with your organization. We anticipate being in touch on Monday, June 5th with a final funding decision for that grant period, again, starting July 1st through to June 30th, 2024. With that, I will turn it over to Gisela.
Thank you all. So we have the information, contact information, if you have any questions after the webinar, to continue to communicate with us around either Flux or the grant guidelines and the information in the grant guidelines. But you all have been very active in our chat and have posed some amazing questions here. So we're gonna roll back and get to some of your questions. Appreciate it. Some of the things here. There is the first question around a fiscal sponsor who has previously been granted the early investment strategy, and whether that makes your group eligible to apply. They are treated as a fiscal sponsor, not the organization who is applying. So they can apply as your fiscal sponsor, and you would be the one providing all of the information in the proposal and the alignment of how your work is carried out in alliance with the grant guidelines. So I hope that helps clarify that. The next question is about organizations that have been previously funded by the New York Women's Foundation, but not within the early investment strategy. And yes, this is actually okay, right? We know groups have been funded through different strategies at the foundation. If you have not in the past through the early investment, you are eligible to apply. Then there's a question here about whether the early investment strategy or funding serves more as a first check for organizations without any previous funding, or would this or would previous funding be encouraged? We really see a range of groups in their startup mode. So sometimes we are the seed funding for organizations just starting, and other times there have been other funders at the table. So, you know, as long as your work is aligned with what the priorities are and the grant guidelines that you are reviewing, we encourage groups in this stage to apply. Then there's a question here of organizations partnering to seek the early investment grant together. I would prefer to hand it over to Camille to sort of take this on. I take a stab at it, but I think you can.
It's the questions around partnering, right?
Partnering, and whether then it could be a grant for 160 versus 80.
So typically with the early investment strategy, we evaluate organizations by organizations. However, and so we have not had in the past groups who are applying together in partnerships. I would say that we would evaluate each organization by the criteria that we put forth. So for example, in that instance, there may be an organization that is more closely aligned to the priorities than others. So what I would say is it would depend on the partnership that's being put forward. This strategy is designed specifically for small grassroots organizations. We do also have other funding areas in which we are funding partnerships and collaborations. And so we'd love to have a conversation around what you're proposing before we would say go forth and do that, because I think that that is atypical to what has been previously done in this investment before, this area strategy before. But we have many other opportunities in which we have funded partnerships and collaborations.
Thank you. The next question is around what the difference is between the $80,000 grant that we're talking about as a one-year funding 1-year funding, and then the 5-year investment that we were talking about. So for this open opportunity, you're applying for your first year within that 5-year investment. And so the amount is $80K. We would then touch back within a year, discuss where the work is, how things are going. And we do have several touch points throughout the year as we get to know you and you get to know us as a partner. And then there are opportunities where we can make multi-year investments throughout that 5-year, but the organization itself is funded over a 5-year period in this strategy. And that sometimes also means that for some groups, it is those 5 consecutive years. But we have had instances that organizations just take a pause, shift in their work, and do not complete that consecutively, but rather, maybe funded for 2 years, and then there might be a leadership transition, something happens, there's a break, and then they return to us, and we would continue to fund that organization up until the 5 years. So for year 3, 4, and 5, even if it's not consecutively. So I hope that helps clarify that. There's a question about having already a Flux sign in for the portal, those credentials are still valid. But if for whatever reason you are not able to log on, then that's when you would contact Marissa to reset the password for the user that you're trying to log in with. Let's see. What if your organization operates remotely, and how would a site visit be completed? We have certainly accommodated a virtual site visit and check-ins, so we are able to accommodate folks who are in different situations. And can we get feedback if you are rejected? Absolutely. It's it is one of our commitments as a community foundation to be able to communicate with you all, even after a cycle. So we do just ask, after the cycle wraps up, that would be when we would schedule it, not necessarily while we're still in the cycle, just for our own capacity, but we would certainly be able to meet, and you'll get an email around that information and how to book that time with us after you get notification of not being granted. How many applications do we typically receive, and how many grants do we expect to give? So I don't know if Marissa or Camille want to take on that with a little bit of history.
Sure. So the early investment strategy has been the strategy of how we've supported small grassroots organizations for the last few decades. That's how we've been able to support small organizations, and it is typically the most popular grant opportunity that's available. It's our open cycle, which we also haven't had in a couple of years. And so as a result, it is often very competitive. We have 13 grants that we're able to make this cycle. And based on the number of organizations on this call, if you all actually apply, that would give you a sense of how competitive it is. So really in your proposal, we ask as much as possible in giving us the overview of your organization, please do detail how you see the alignment, not only with the mission and values of the foundation, but our priority issues and priority populations at this time. One of the things that Gisela mentioned around the opportunity for a decline call at the end of the cycle is that we can also share with you what are other funding opportunities at the foundation, which I hope you all are on our email list to continue to keep abreast of what's happening. So it may be a no, or it could be a not right now. So we want to let you know that we want to be able to figure out, especially if there's great alignment, but there is a lot of competitiveness in the cycle, how we can figure out how to best partner with you. So those are the things just to keep in mind, that it is one of the cycles that it tends to be the most competitive.
Great. So another question is around having a financial cap. So the example is that a small grassroots organization has an operational grant of $275,000. So as we mentioned before, we really fund groups at this startup phase in a range of whether we would be the first funder or others. So this would not be a limitation to apply. But related is that we also, again, staying true to the grassroots and emerging groups, there is a budget cap for organizations applying, and I want to remember what the number is. I think it's 5 organizations under 5 million.
No, we go much lower for EI. So yeah, it's even much lower. I mean, many of our early investment organizations have been around, they are under probably 1.5 and below. So we've had, for example, organizations that have applied and successfully been awarded grants, and they've had budgets of $300,000. We want to be able to have this grant be something that's useful to an organization that they can quickly utilize as general operating support. But one of the things we also do, in addition to the opportunity to have access to these dollars up to 5 years, is access to capacity building support, capacity building grants. And so we're really looking to support the smallest organizations who can not only take advantage of the grant opportunities, but the capacity building resources that we have available as well. And to confirm, yes, 1.5 million. I saw that in the chat.
Okay, great. The next question is about using a week workspace and hosting in-person workshops with mentees only on Sundays. How will a site visit happen? Again, we accommodate folks being able to meet remotely. These days, we understand that, schedules and programs run all sorts of times and days. But for our team and our grants advisory committee, it would be on the dates that are mentioned in the grant guidelines, and we can accommodate a virtual conversation. Other questions around having been in New York City, but working nationally or remotely and being eligible. Again, if you have a hub in New York City and you are aligned with the priorities that you see in the grant guidelines, you are eligible to apply, even if you have a national scope to your work. But as Dimple mentioned, if it's, your work is now expanding nationally, we would, you might want to consider a program-specific grant that really zeroes in on the work that you are doing in New York City. We cleared up the threshold, and then clarifying the general operating versus the program support. So again, program support is just limited so that we sort of know the geographical area that you're working in, and that it aligns with the work and the priorities of our grant guidelines and the strategy. But for the most part, we are actually always promoting to give general operating support to organizations, specifically in the startup phase of their work. And I don't know which website folks wanted to get information about, but if you could clarify, please do so. If we fund direct service providers, and for this particular organization, I think just generally, yes, we fund both advocacy work, organizing work, and service providers, as long as, again, you are fitting the other eligibility requirements. All right. Let's see, other questions. Sorry. I received COVID-19. Yep. So there's a question here. Sorry, before we get to that one, oversight is that your Women's Foundation division with regards to the use of funds. Can you please describe how you plan to guide or advise the grantee? If you could clarify, what you would like to know specifically about oversight. Again, we try to encourage the general operating grant. We do touch points and have, a relationship ongoing throughout the time with the foundation to figure out what your needs are, if there are other ways to support your work, whether that be through capacity building opportunities or through connecting with other partners. We try to really be supportive in identifying the ways in which we can leverage our connection, our ability to connect you to other, whether that be consultants, providers, partners, and other grantee partners that can support and collaborate with you. Yeah.
So all grantee partners, first of all, just a little bit about us as funders. We are funders that want to partner with you. We use the term grantee partner very intentionally. And so when you're applying to us, you're applying, sharing with us your mission, your vision for the next year. And we'll also get a chance to talk about that work if you're funded over the course of 5 years. Every grantee partner is assigned a program officer who'll get to know you and you'll get to know them very well. And they'll be able to be there as a partner, as a thought partner for you, someone who can also connect you to resources, to be able to help you manifest the mission that you have to move forward. So annually, what we ask is that you complete an annual evaluation tool. We're happy to share that with you. And then that's just for us to understand how you are progressing towards the values and mission, the work that you have put forth, and also perhaps some of the challenges that you're experiencing. So we can also flag and be able to say, hey, here are other ways that we can support you in building your organizational sustainability, supporting leadership, thinking through challenges, for example, with program services and delivery, connecting you to other grantee partners to advance your work. And so we really want to see this as a partnership where we're able to help you move your work forward, be able to connect you with other resources that are available for you. So it, again, is guided by you in terms of what you're saying you'd like to do, and we're here to partner with you along the way.
Thank you. There is a question here around submitting the applications in Spanish. The Flux system is able to do a translation of the application materials, so feel free to do that. I will just mention that it is utilizing a service, so it might not be as clear. And if we have some follow-up questions, we would have to, just reach out to you to be able to be clear on everything before we also provide that material back in English for our grant advisory committee who may not have the bilingual capacity, but we will definitely try to accommodate as best as possible. Let's see, how are eligibility requirements ensuring that this fund will truly be granting smaller, newer grassroots organizations rather than organizations that have a lot of resources already? So again, the threshold tries to address that as well as the rest of the application. And our site visits are really about getting to know groups, and ensuring that when we're asking these questions, that we're also understanding how the group is sort of thinking about their resources, what is available to them, their access to other philanthropic partners, and the threshold again helps us sort of navigate where folks are, and that has been one of the ways in which we do that. And then again, when is the next time that the early investment strategy will be opened? This is again sort of not every year. It tends to be every 2 or 3 years where we have an open cycle. Because it is a multi-year funding opportunity for 5 years, as folks cycle off, we are able to then bring in some new resources to be able to bring in some groups, but it doesn't happen on a yearly basis. Awesome. How many total awards will be given this year? We addressed that. We have 13 available grants for this cycle. And after the awards are given, are there opportunities to connect with other awardees? And yes, the answer is yes. We try to really make sure that we are committing to that part of community and leveraging however we can connect folks that come to us and that we get to know. Trans Latinx communities and sex workers can apply. Yes, they are part of the priority communities that we list in our grant guidelines. And do you consider those who have been in operation for 6 months or a year and really looking for a bit more established ones? As we said, we are committed to ensuring that groups that are fairly new get a chance, as long as things are aligned again with the priorities and how your work is aligned with the strategy. You are considered. And again, reminder that this cycle also includes grant advisory committee members who are community, who come from community and will be reviewing these proposals and often are the ones who really elevate these groups that are really at the startup phases because they themselves have seen, several organizations or projects that have been underfunded in these areas. And so for those who are virtual, we will continue to schedule virtual site visits. And let's see. If you are denied, can you reapply? Yes, there are organizations who have done that in the past. Will applications addressing a greater number of bullets under the priorities be rated more highly? Can a responsive application concentrated on one bullet be funded? Camille, do you want, if they are aligned with more than one priority, is that a stronger application than just one? I would say what usually happens with grants advisory committee.
I would say it is something to take into consideration along with so many other factors. So for example, if you're a multi-service organization that is working on reproductive justice issues, anti-violence and safety and economic justice at the same time, with a very strong gender justice lens, that's a strong application for us. We're more than likely wanting to know more. But for example, if you are an organization just focused on, say, economic security issues or workforce development program, but you also have a gender justice lens that's really strong, we take that and we see that as a strong application as well. So we'll begin to look at other factors. We'll look at perhaps size of organization. We'll look at organizational leadership. We'll look at, quite frankly, we'll also look at what the portfolio currently looks like. And if there are things in our portfolio that perhaps we're not currently funding that we want to fund. So there'll be a variety of different things that we'll take into consideration. But also to remember that it's not just us, that we'll also have our GAC volunteers who will be at the site visit. We'll want to hear from them. What are they hearing? What are they seeing? And also sort of utilize that information in thinking about the recommendations that are put forth for our board to consider. So, there are a variety of factors. We see multi-service or multi-issue area work as incredibly wonderful to see. But I think so many other factors are taken into consideration, very much one that has a strong gender justice lens, strong racial justice lens, working perhaps in geographical communities that we're not in, a small organization that could perhaps benefit from a variety of different supports that we have to offer. But there are a lot of different things that we would consider, and it's not necessarily one for one. So it's something that is all on the table.
Thank you. There's also another question around any restrictions that may be put upon for providers of services for undocumented New Yorkers. There is not. Again, the alignment of the work and priority communities is what we're looking for. There are no restrictions around the population that you're working with. And while there are other questions around specific programs, what I urge you is just to, again, look over the grant guidelines and identify the alignment that you see. And if you would like to follow up with us about whether the program itself is aligned for this opportunity, then let us know. If you were receiving funds at the beginning of COVID, if we receive funds at the beginning of COVID-19, if you can apply, yes. If you want to clarify a little bit more, that would be great. Let's see. Our early years and support. So again, if you have been funded in the early investment strategy, you are not eligible. But if you have received funding in any other strategy, including support through the COVID-19 grant, then you are eligible to apply. This would be a new opportunity for you in the early investment strategy.
Yeah. So if you don't know, right, because again, we have been funding this strategy for 36 years. So we don't purport to know that, you've been there this whole time and may not know that your organization may have had a pre-existing relationship with the foundation on this strategy. Reach out to us. We'll let you know what the years were that you were funded. We've also had instances, for example, where an organization has been funded for a few years, but not the full 5 years. They've come back and they're applying. So let us know, we'll let you know if your organization was funded for 5 years through early investment. Some of you have been funded recently and are aware of that, but some from the early aughts may not know that. So let us know, we're happy to supply that information.
Again, question around financial cap. So if a group has $0 as a new, you are eligible to apply. If we will be your first funder, that is fine. The only restriction is if you are an organization over 1.5 million, you are not eligible under the grassroots investment that we would make in this strategy.
And I think somebody asked on the chat, is that a hard number? We understand if your budget looks like 1.5, 555, even 1.6, right? We're not trying to instantly throw organizational proposals out the window. But I want you to be clear on the intentionality. We really are looking to support the smaller grassroots organizations. So that is where the ballpark in which we're looking at organizations. If you think your budget is close to that, or a little bit above, please put it in if you really think you're strongly aligned with these other priority areas. But we are prioritizing small grassroots organizations with smaller budgets. 1.5 is what we're looking at as the cutoff.
There's again some questions around site visits and whether it's a physical space or availability throughout the time. We are really committed to providing, being as flexible as possible with any restrictions you have in a physical space. And so we would encourage a virtual site visit to be able to accommodate the time or physical space limitations that you all might have. Contact you to invite to upcoming future event. How can we contact you to invite you all to future events? You can feel free to email us at programs@nywf.org for any information you want to share with us around your programs. Folks are asking about whether they can see the application questions before registering on Flex, or is a sample form available to assess the capacity needed to complete the application process. Marissa, do you want to guide folks through that?
Sure, absolutely. So while you can't see the application in the system without applying, when we send around the slides, I can certainly send around a blank form of the application. The one note I'll say is there is some logic in the application form. I'll try and capture all of that, but what you specifically answer in the system will be specific to your application. But I'll make sure that that's included in what we send around.
Great. Some folks are asking around the capacity building opportunities and support that are provided to grantee partners. And an example is around costs for an audit for organizations. So once you are in the early investment strategy, there are capacity building opportunities, both workshop-based and other opportunities for your learning, but also individual capacity dollars that are provided to your organization to complete particular projects or partnerships with a provider, a consultant, anyone you need. So this would be around financial management or financial needs that you could request support for during the time of your grant. Okay, I am mindful of time, so I'm trying to move through all of the opportunities here. Folks are asking if there are other organizations that are more established and larger budgets, if there are other opportunities in the pipeline. We encourage you to sign up for our email list on our website so that you can be added to the list when any opportunity opens up. And then Yes, you can apply if you've been in operation for 6 months, but are just starting your work in New York. And again, we would like to hear about the work in New York through your application. There was a question here around whether a portion of our grants can be used for reserve funds. I'm not quite sure.
So we have not made any restrictions on that. We offer general operating support. And so you propose to us how you want to use the dollars for your budget. And then when we check in on an annual basis through our reporting system, as well as in your ongoing relationship with your program officer, you can let them know how those dollars were used to advance your mission and your strategy for that year. And if a reserve is part of that, then that's something that I think what we want to hear more about. So we have had no restrictions on that in the past.
Some folks are asking about specifically about 990s and some of the requirements. Again, we encourage you to look through the list of required documents that you need to upload so that you're clear on what we are asking. We're a funder that tries to really not, really relieve the burden of gathering a lot of documents that need to be uploaded in our system. So if you do not complete an audit for the year, that is not a problem, that you can contact us with any additional specific questions to your organization. All right. We do not have a preferred format for budgets. So if you do them on Excel or if you do them in any other program, that is okay. Also no format on like it needs to look this way or that. These are questions that we can answer through our site visit. If we do have any questions that maybe is not reflected in the format that you're giving, then we have some questions around, but nothing, not a specific format is required. Okay. So can we add New York programs, New York Women's Foundation staff members to our mailing list, to events and general organization news, or just the programs at NYWF? We would encourage you to use the programs at NYWF for any listservs that you all have. Let's see. I think we're getting down to the last. Oh, okay. So thank you all. I think that's. Oh, I got to the bottom of it. So that's it. Look at us, really on time. Appreciate again the very active chat and all the questions, and as well just for your time and for all of the work that you're all carrying out. Whether it aligns with this opportunity or not, it's very important to uplift that. A lot of folks, and this afternoon, over 100 folks are here with incredible projects and work that is happening in New York City. So thank you all for that as well. So have a great rest of your day. Take care.